Hi, I'm Brian Mickelson. I'm Vice President and General Manager of Datadog's U.S. Public Sector Sales, and I'm joined here today by Jeff Carlisle, Regulated Industries Product Manager for Datadog, and Emilio Escobar, Chief Information Security Officer for Datadog. Excited to have this conversation. Been waiting for it for some time. With the success we're having in U.S. public sector, I think it's a great opportunity to share the base, what's some of the foundation for that success, and how some of the people, both in front of and behind the scenes, bring it to life. With that said, I know you both have some pretty interesting backgrounds beyond Datadog. They overlap with industry and government service, and so maybe we could start there and talk a little bit about that. Amelia, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about your history.
Yeah, no, and super excited to be here. And it is, I think, a great time to be talking about what we think about the federal sector and the public sector and the challenges and how Datadog can help. So I started as a software developer, and I had a long stint with the Department of Defense as a software developer. Did that as a civilian for a few years, but then became a contractor where then I was running engineering for a company that was selling security products to the government. While as a software developer in the Department of Defense, I was working already in security. So it's always been a development towards security or for security. So the building security products for the government was actually a great opportunity that got me started in my career. And here I am.
That's awesome. We're going to come back to you because I'm sure there's a lot of people that would like to know how that translates to becoming the CISO of a company such as Datadog. But let's go to Mr. Carlisle for a second. Jeff, you've got current service in your background, but it's not the first service you've done for the government. Why don't we just talk a little bit about where you started?
Started my journey actually in the United States Coast Guard as an information systems technician and supporting cutter communications and some various other systems, secure comms for the Coast Guard. During that journey, I had the opportunity to take a DCE, which enabled me to then move into more of a leadership role and to delivering different types of systems for the Coast Guard. After which, we completed the U.S. Coast Guard Cyber Command initiation. Was then transferred to the reserves, where I made the move to the United States Air Force, where I currently serve as a lieutenant colonel in the reserves. So again, I looking forward to having this conversation.
That's some really interesting background. Let's pivot back to Emilio for a second. So now you're the Chief Information Security Officer of Datadog. Mm-hmm. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you make that transition from where you started, and become the CISO? But why don't you tell us a little bit about what it's like to be CISO of a company like Datadog?
You know what's funny about the public sector is what do you do at the public sector happens to be the hardest question we can always answer. And then it sort of goes from there. So my journey from the government was I joined the private sector. Ironically, I went from the government to media. So that was a very interesting transition. But it did also get me exposed to certain situations where I think helped me a lot to get to where I am. So back then, some of the gaming companies were dealing with a lot of hacktivism. I'm sure we've heard the name Anonymous and the Lizard Squads and all of the world and all of that. So being in the middle of in a company where those groups were targeting your organization and running the software security teams for those was really interesting. But one thing that the government, I think, taught me was sort of that focus on a mission. And it's always, sometimes people have a hard time understanding, like, the private sector, what's the mission? But there's always a mission, right? And our mission is the customer, right? And that's how we always do things for the customer. And I think for me, what has helped me get to probably the CISO level has been, like, I always have had that customer mission type of approach. In the government, my customer were the active duty soldiers and airmen and in there. But in the private sector, my customers were my coworkers or the product or the company. So I think addressing that from the security problems from the other people's side of the house is what really got me to the CISO level. And what it's like to be a CISO, it varies depending on companies. I think for Datadog, it's exciting because we are a a tech product that normally sells to tech, and so we can really talk about tech, which is something that you always read about out there about it's frowned upon a CISO because a CISO is supposed to be all strategy, no tech. In Datadog, you get to actually do both, which is really interesting, and I get to work with folks like you two, so it's always good.
That's great. Jeff, why don't we come back to you? So, Coast Guard background, current lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Air Force, also the regulated industries product manager for Datadog. Tell us how that comes to be.
It's ingrained in you that the mission is the focus and the priority. I like to talk about customer obsession because to Amelia's point, the customer becomes the mission. And being able to provide the customer with the best of breed tech is a mission. One of the reasons why I'm excited to be here at Datadog, excited to have this conversation, excited to bring the tech to that customer base.
All right. Thank you all both for that. I mean, between your public service, between how you've transitioned that into your careers, and now how your careers have led you to this place and time with Datadog. Datadog's known for its leadership in the world of observability and security. Before we go too deep into that, why don't we just talk a little bit about the what of it all? Amelia, why don't we start with you? How do you define observability in the context that we like to use at Datadog?
Sure. So it comes down to the core principle of being able to know and understand what's happening. So what are your applications doing? What is your infrastructure doing? How they're behaving? And the one thing that we noticed early on for Datadog was that people were moving to the cloud. Companies were moving to the cloud. They wanted to accelerate innovation, but they were having huge blind spots of not knowing what's going on with their environment. But then one of the things that I think makes Datadog even greater is not just the technology aspect of visibility or observability, is the teams that are working in this infrastructure. How do we actually reduce the silos between those two teams so that they see the same data, they can understand what's going on, and they can respond to it appropriately? And that's what we thought about as security as well. As technology gets more complex impact security, but security is also being organizationally siloed from where the development happens. So we're trying to use that same philosophy towards security and being able to reduce those silos as well, so that security can see something that the engineers can also see as well and be able to see the same dashboards and respond to it appropriately.
I love that. There's a lot I'd like to say. We'll come back to it around more so than just the technology, but the cultural aspect of breaking down silos. And we talk a lot about that at Datadog. Jeff, before we go too much deeper into that conversation, how do you articulate observability? Anything you would add to what Emilio said?
Yeah, no, it's a really great answer. I guess kind of liken it to a car dashboard. All the information that you need to actually function and drive your vehicle is right there at a glance, right? So we want to provide that same kind of while it's complex, we want to simplify it and make it easier for our customers to actually act on it. So your check engine light comes on, it throws an error code. Well, you know exactly what that means, and you can take it to the appropriate shop to have it fixed. We are that dashboard, and that dashboard is going to relate to the performance of your applications and the security of your infrastructure, the performance of your infrastructure, et cetera. And that's really a critical thing for government and public sector customers, understanding the posture of their infrastructure, because it is complex. It's a hybrid environment, and it continues to become more and more complex with the cloud migrations and hybrid architectures.
You know what? You both mentioned complexity. If you don't mind, I want to dovetail off complexity for a minute, because I think it's exactly right. My own history, I'm 26 years in IT sales and sales leadership, and I've had the benefit of working for some of the best companies in the industry. I sold PCs at IBM in the 90s. I helped Cisco from a route switch perspective, build the internet in the late 90s into the .com bust. 20 years with Red Hat after that, and helped them build their public sector team. But all that leads me to Datadog. And what's interesting about it, and I've got 15 plus years working with defense and civilian agencies as well as SLG, state, local governments. What I see in the industry, and it's interesting that you both picked up on complexity, I see the IT systems that we build and manage becoming more complex at an accelerating rate. And if you think about it, regardless of which industry analyst you want to listen to, if we think about how Gartner portrays it, a few years back, they were talking technical debt. And I think it's interesting, right? Because what's the fuel for technical debt and its complexity? And so we talk about the three things we can manage. We can manage people, process, and tools. Oftentimes that's people, process, and technology. The people aspect of that's the cultural side. And so I think we in the tech industry, we probably get lost in our own technology on a pretty frequent basis. But I think what Datadog really does in an interesting way is we connect the dots between the technology. To Jeff, your dashboard analogy makes complete sense. We help you understand the real-time health of your IT systems. When you have that information, you know you hit the mean time to detection is a stat that we often talk about. So not only do we know when things are happening, we know what's happening, and we know how to fix that. And I think that's a huge part of this because reducing the complexity eventually reduces the noise, allows us to address those problems in a more succinct way. I'll come back to a few more things I want to say, but why don't we take this a level deeper? We've talked a little bit about what observability is. I think we've talked about connecting the dots between infrastructure, applications, logs, security, front end, the back end, bottom of the stack, from infrastructure all the way up through, serverless technologies and serverless functions. But with that said, what do you think about how do we apply, the things from an observability perspective? How does that translate to what our government customers, our U.S. public sector customers, Jeff, why don't we start with you here a little bit? From a government customer perspective, what do you think some of the challenges that we're helping address with our observability solutions are?
Yeah. Mandates, right? So, this administration's averaging 63, 64 presidential directives. A lot of are aimed at technology, right? So you're seeing cybersecurity, zero trust mandates. You have the M21 logging, which is a direct correlation to what we do at Datadog, for example. And we help federal customers meet that, but also exceed that. We offer, it calls for 12 months of storage. We offer 15 months of storage, whether it's hot, active, multiple configuration options, and such. Customer experience mandate, which you're familiar with there. And in order to provide good customer experience, you have to understand how your systems are performing. And again, kind of mapping back to the complexities of systems, especially in hybrid environments, potentially, having a system that can provide that dashboard. So that, for example, as citizens facing service is the performance degradation is adding 10 minutes to their process to file an e-form, for example. That's going to help. That's going to help provide your attention to that so you can remediate that. And therefore customers and citizens and people would be much happier.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Emilio, you've got quite a bit of experience with customers. You can combine that with your public sector experiences. This will be seen by a lot of our folks out in the public sector world. What's your take on it? How do observability solutions from Datadog, whether we're talking about infrastructure, applications, or logs, or whether we're taking it into where we're really headed now as a company, which is a broader portfolio to help them really understand and remediate security concerns?
Right. So what's interesting about it is, and what I think the cloud has done is, before the cloud, I believe the private sector was normally known for working on more advanced technology and dealing with some of those complexities, while the public sector was sort of still trying to figure out the technical landscape for them and what made sense. I mean, notwithstanding they have some operational IT systems that already has some complexity and some challenges as well. And imagine what a public sector IT deployment looks like worldwide, and being able to meet the demands of their customers. But what the cloud has done is that now the complexities between private and public sector are not really that different from a technology standpoint. What's interesting is when I talk to customers and they ask us, how does a product deal with this type of dynamic that my applications are doing? Could be, hey, I have systems that actually get spun up if the more demand comes in, and then we spin them down as the demand goes down. How does Datadog deal with that? It's like, well, that's exactly how we're architected as well. So if it doesn't work for us, it won't work for you, and therefore we wouldn't even try to sell it to you. So the complexities are about the same. I think what, to Jeff's point, is where the public sector and what I hear from the customers are talking about is these mandates. But mandates are one thing. Mandates, I think, is just an understanding of, hey, we got a problem that we have to solve. But these public agencies, I'm sure they already have been feeling the pain. So the presidential directive is sort of like a way to enable funding to help address those pain points. So imagine being an agency where people go to you when there's a natural disaster and you have a life-threatening emergency and their website is down. And that's the only way you can actually request assistance. Or imagine you have health needs and their website is down. Or they don't, or to your point, I have to file a claim and the claim takes me hours to do so because the systems are slow. So being able to add observability to those life critical or mission critical systems is I think it's a great opportunity and something that we're definitely excited about.
Yeah, no, I think that makes perfect sense. And again, it comes back to the complexity of the systems. My suggestion would be that, in the modern world, you take any large on-demand digital service, we're probably talking about maybe a more simple architecture, a consistent single platform, thousands of microservices. But I think when we think about our government customers, they're really having to balance that which is their legacy, their on-premise environments, with where they're trying to go, which is a more modern digital experience for the citizen. And so I think solutions like Datadog really bring to the forefront, helping our government customers both understand what their architectures look like when they're having challenges in those architectures, and regardless of whether it's legacy on-prem or whether it's cloud native and modern, what we're really helping them do is have observability and security solutions for that full stack and hybrid architecture. So really interesting conversation so far. I'm very appreciative to get your all's responses to the questions. We've talked about your backgrounds. We've talked about what is observability, talked a little bit about how observability applies and what are some of the analogies we can use to simplify the conversation. But recently, Datadog's made some, I'd say, very strategic announcements. We've committed to elevated levels of FedRAMP. We've been FedRAMP moderate since January of 22. But we've recently committed to FedRAMP High. We've also made a public commitment to gain information assurance authorization level 5. This is all very strategic. It's very important. But Jeff, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's the status of Datadog? What does FedRAMP mean, and what is the meaning of these announcements?
Yeah, absolutely. Currently, Datadog, we're FedRAMP moderate. We have over 100 authorizations currently for different federal and also commercial customers. So we're not entirely new to this space. We're going to take that and up level that to a FedRAMP High ATO, authority to operate, which is going to enable us to provide these critical services and critical capability to other federal government agencies that have a higher security standard from a security control perspective. So we are expanding the reach of Datadog within this space, which is really exciting. Around Impact Level 5, that is a Department of Defense standard for SaaS services, set of security standards that SaaS companies have to meet in order to provide their services into the Department of Defense. We are going to deploy a Impact Level 5 region, which is going to enable us to handle national system security data type sets, which is essentially more mission critical workloads and for that Department of Defense community. So really exciting. Looking forward to it.
It's really exciting for us too. What I would suggest is, if you think about what Datadog is, right? Full stack, hybrid architecture, observability, and security. And when we talk about what we're doing with elevated FedRAMP authorization, elevated information assurance level authorization, what we're really doing, I think, is we are putting an exclamation point on our commitment to security. And maybe Emilio, given your CISO title, why don't we come back to you a little bit, and why don't we pivot, from, we know why it's important in the U.S. public sector, but maybe you can make some correlation between our, where we're going from an observability and security perspective. How does what we're doing in the Department of Defense and FedRAMP world, how does that translate back to what everybody else, our 26,000 commercial customers, can benefit from?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that is happening is I think the security requirements are growing for both sides, right? So us elevating to FedRAMP High and IO5 means that we have to work on some technical and procedural controls, where I believe the commercial sector is going to get there at some point, right? So obviously, when you deal with government special type of data, then the security requirements are a little bit higher than what we normally see from commercial customers. But the trajectory from commercial customers is also for asking for more as well. And at the end of the day, it's a matter of trust, right? So we use security a lot, but I like to use the word trust because customers want to make sure that they trust their vendors. And if we're giving them and telling them we're going to be solving your observability problems and we're going to help you with security as well, we're committing to a pretty large mission statement for them. We're basically a means to their end. We help them get to where they want to be. We're not their end. We're just a means to their end. And that has to be, we have to match that or meet that with trust. So this is what I am excited about this opportunity, because it's going to help us elevate our level of controls that I believe the commercial sector is going to eventually be asking for as well. And then more importantly, on the security side, from our offerings as well, the public sector is not unique there either. They do have their own security challenges, and we talked about people before. They also have their own silos internally as well. I hear that from our public sector customers as well. So being able to help them bridge those, build those bridges will be exciting as well.
Throw a question back at you, Brian. You've been doing this for 30 years. What's unique about Datadog?
I appreciate that. So 26 years in IT sales and sales leadership, both private sector, but with the breadth of my experience being in public sector, I think I've seen some trends that have been repeated over the decades. And I think the way it starts is companies tend to come to market with a best of breed capability. And Datadog, frankly, is no different. When Datadog started, we are what we are today. We're a single unified platform, and our capabilities, come from the application in many cases of a single lightweight open source agent. But when you think about from where we started to where we are, because of that single unified platform, and it's a core tenet of what we do at Datadog, we have scaled into application performance monitoring. We make the connection through automatic tagging to the exhaust of the technology industry, which is the logging, and really correlating challenges you see at the infrastructure level connected to the challenge, what's happening at the application level, and parsing directly to the logs that are connected to that challenge. And I think what's unique is I talked about, best of breed solution providers. Eventually, the most successful companies in the industry graduate to the idea of end-to-end solutions. And when you think about where Datadog's at in this space, what we have really done and what we're demonstrating with our 26,000 customers, we've got 3 different products that are doing over $500 million in sales, with our primary infrastructure capabilities doing over $1 billion in sales. It is a unique time and place for a company like Datadog to be able to stand up and articulate the end-to-end capability, where it doesn't matter if we're talking about operating systems, virtual machines, containers, microservices, serverless functions. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about the back end, networking and databases, or the front end with what's happening from a customer experience with a digital government offering, private or public sector. So in this place and time, Datadog is promoting itself as an end-to-end solutions provider, meeting the needs of our customers in a unique way. And I think I am excited to be here. I'm excited about the opportunity that we have to solve our customers' needs. And I love the way we go about our business, which is we want to find the problem you're trying to solve. We have a breadth of capabilities, but the most important thing to us is figuring out that one most important thing to you to demonstrate our capability. And then what we know in the industry statistics that we do talk about show almost no churn, a really high net ARR, which means customers are expanding. So for us, it's about finding that unique thing that the customer needs help with today, knowing that when they start to see what the platform capabilities are, our expansion is amazing, and it's because of the problems we help them solve. So I appreciate you asking. With that said, I think we're wrapping up here, but I'd be curious, is there any last words, Amelia, that you'd like to throw on the table?
No, I think for me, the last word, and to really simplify for anyone for everyone who's listening, and for prospects and current customers, is if you ask me what Datadog is about, and I get asked this all the time, funny sometimes even at the airport when I wear my Datadog t-shirt, I say we're in the business of context. So we're here to give you the context that you need to do for you to reach your goals. And you brought up a good point where most observability platforms have historically stayed at the infrastructure layer. And sometimes it's really hard to find out what a user is actually experiencing because the servers or the Kubernetes clusters or the logs don't show it. Datadog helps you combine that from the user perspective experience to what an infrastructure is doing. So it's really how do you meet the problem right where it is, rather than like starting somewhere and then digging a hole and trying to discover and find your way in. So we pinpoint you to where you need to look at.
I'm going to connect to that after Jeff wraps up. Anything else, Jeff, from your point of view? Anything you want to put on the table?
Pretty tough to follow that one. I'm just excited to bring the capability and the breadth of services that we provide to our public sector customer base, and it's exciting times.
I love it. The way I'm going to wrap us up, and it was something Amelia said that I think brings it to the forefront. We talked earlier about best of breed solutions versus end-to-end solutions. We talked people, process, and tools, or people, process, and technology, where the people is culture and the tools are technology. When you think about what Datadog really does, when you have an end-to-end solution that connects the front-end user experience with the back-end infrastructure, applications, logs, and security, what you really are doing is breaking down silos in your own organization. And I think that's the secret sauce at Datadog. What Datadog's really doing is we bring everybody together. I think the most overused expression in 3 decades of technology is single pane of glass. You said it earlier. You said trust. I'll offer truth. We offer a single source of truth so that in those most, when you have a severity 1 incident, what's really happening at that point in time, you get that ITSM or you get your ticket started, you are bringing people together and they're not bringing their unique perspective from their unique tools. We are offering customers cost reduction through tool consolidation, but the real benefit is we're breaking down silos in their organization by giving everybody the same single source of truth through a single unified full stack end-to-end observability platform. So I thank you all very much for your time today. I hope this is going to be interesting for our customers. And if anybody's got questions, concerns, feel free to reach out to any of us via LinkedIn.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.